Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. I think we can start. We can start already. Good morning. Welcome, everyone, to the workshop on open source applications focused on artificial intelligence for the public sector. This is brought to you by the Open Source Observatory and the Interoperable Europe community. Just one thing before we start presenting you the team and the agenda and so forth. We're going to be recording this. Workshop. You will have it available in the OSOR collection under the Interoperable Europe portal. So just in case you have an issue with that, this is going to be recorded and you will have it later available. So go to the next slide then. So just to briefly present you the team that's going to facilitate the workshop today. My name is Alejandro. I'm a core team member of the Open Source Observatory. I'm here with my colleagues Teuta, Leopoldo, and Yusuf. Teuta, Leopoldo, and myself will be facilitating the workshop. I will be giving you the introduction and then the conclusions in the end. My colleague Yusuf will be in charge of moderating our panel of experts and also the workshop. And we are also here from the Digits. We have Axel Tevenet, who is our policy officer of the Open Source Program Office. And also we have Miguel Díaz Blanco, who is the team lead of interoperability enablers and open source. And without further ado, I give him the floor to give you the welcome and introduction. Miguel, please.
Thanks, Alejandro. I hope you hear me well all. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this workshop with the title Driving Public Value Through Open Source Artificial Intelligence. I'm replacing Monica today, who normally is doing the welcoming, and she's enjoying a well-deserved vacation. So my name is Miguel Díaz Blanco. Indeed, I'm the team lead for interoperability enablers and open source. Monica and I, we are in the same team. And yeah, in situations like this one, we have no problem to help each other when it comes to these events. As for the workshop today, I think it's a very interesting one because it's mixing two topics that I would say are the most, the hottest one since the last years. One is AI and the impact it's having in our lives. And the other topic is sovereignty, which is something that is also very relevant, especially since the latest geopolitical changes. So I think that the workshop today is really nailing it, and you will have very interesting agenda, as you will see afterwards. And then from my side, in addition to welcoming you, yes, it's just to give a couple of updates on the policy side from two angles. I think one of them is the AI Act, which probably you are familiar with. It was published in June 2024. It's the first regulatory framework in the world in terms of AI for the European Union. And here, for the sake of the workshop today, I think it's important to highlight how this act is promoting the open source dimension, and even to the point that certain controls that normally are given in this act, they are relaxed when it comes to open source. Certain directions in terms of transparency, there are exceptions when it comes to open source, which is a very indicative way on the willingness of Europe to promote open source. Of course, these are not blanket exceptions. If there are elements like systemic risks, okay, in that case, you might need still to satisfy some transparency requirements, but otherwise, yeah, open source is there from the get-go, and it's not being ignored. And I think it's not because we see the potential, especially in Europe, on open source AI models and in general. So, and probably that one you were familiar with. The next one is perhaps more recent, and I might need to give more information. Here is the tech sovereignty package, which was published on the 3rd of June. It's a big package with different files, with the aim of giving that push to Europe in terms of digital sovereignty. It's composed of different elements. there is the CADA, Cloud and AI Development Act, which is about building muscle in Europe with more data centers, with more capacity to deploy AI and cloud European solutions. So, and open source is there, by the way. There is even a concrete chapter on that about promoting open source first. So from that angle, again, open source is coming in. Then we have the CHIPS Act, which is more about the semiconductors market. Then we have digitalization and AI for the energy sector. So again, AI coming in. And then actually is the first block is the Chapeau communication, is the global communication on tech sovereignty. It comes with the EU open source strategy. So which I have to say, Monica and I, we have been involved in this work together with colleagues from Connect. It's an ambitious strategy, the open source strategy. It has 4 main elements. One, it's about promoting digital open source solutions. And there are references from programs that they were already ongoing, like the Open Internet Stack, but also new things like creating more awareness, then strengthening and scaling up open source startups. If you have not seen it, I think it's interesting if you have a read. And then one of these blocks is consists, and I think it's chapter 4, it's about promoting open source in public administrations. And this is where we and Monica, we have been more involved because it's related to the European Commission open source strategy. We are going to have our own open source strategy based on 3 pillars. And the interesting thing is that it's not going to be something internal for Commission, but it's supposed to be also a reference for public administrations to be adopted and to be acquired and to be used as inspiration. So if you didn't have the chance, I invite you to look at, especially at the latest one, I guess for the EI Act you were already more familiar with. And yeah, perhaps in some subsequent OSOR workshops, we might discuss this point and dig more into the details. So yeah, that was the policy angle. Then from Radio Commission, Alejandro, and yeah, back to you. And I hope you enjoy the workshop. I'm sure you're gonna see very interesting content. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miguel. Now I'm going to present you in a couple of minutes what we do in the OSOR, in the observatory. Just to tell you that, yeah, please next slide. Yes, just to tell you what are the 3 pillars that we actually focus the work that we do in OSOR. First of all, to promote open source, more specifically for public administrations in Europe. We are also served as a knowledge management tool and also a community platform in which you can find all the policies, strategies on open source at the European level, and also best practices. Of course, also is part of the interoperable Europe community. So we support the digital transformation and interoperability. Just for the content that you may find under the OSOR collection, you can find, first of all, 2,600 plus pieces of news that is increasing every month. We also have a newsletter that now actually, for those who are subscribed to the OSOR newsletter, now the frequency is different because we are part of the Interoperable Europe community newsletter. So the frequency is a special edition. So now the frequency is a little bit different, but of course we are still putting out newsletter. Case studies that you find in there that we're also updating. For instance, one of the projects nowadays that will be presenting later on. The panel of experts will be the subject of case study we'll be putting out really soon. Also, of course, guidelines, country reports, and country fish. All the events that are organized by us, but also the events that in which we plan to present OSOR, and all the different information on all the open source solutions that are available for the public sector in Europe. Now, for the agenda of our workshop today, Now we're in the welcome and introduction that we'll try to keep really short because we really have a lot of information that we want to share with you. Then right after this, we'll have the presentations of the panel conversation for a panel of experts, of our 3 experts that will be introduced later on. Then we will have a short, more open, more dynamic kind of workshop in which we will be asking you questions and we will want to hear from you. And in the end, I will pick up again the floor in order to discuss the conclusions of the workshop. For the objectives of the actual workshop, first and foremost, to examine the role of open source, artificial intelligence open source in the public sector, specifically for the public sector, and the relevance for public administrations, which is why we have brought you today some cases of projects that have successfully deployed this type of projects in public administrations in Europe. Then we will try to identify, also with your help during the workshop, the main barriers to adopt and scale open source AI in the government, and also to discuss all the practical solutions that may be deployed by our experts, by you, in order to help public administration overcome these actual barriers, in order to deploy more open source solutions in Europe. And not to take much more of your time, now I will let you in the expert hands of my colleague Yusuf. Yusuf, please.
Thank you, Alejandro. Also, a very warm welcome from my side, especially with this heat wave. I think it's even a warmer welcome than most would have wanted. My name is Yusuf Barman. I'm joining from Basel, just at the northern border of Switzerland, across from Germany and France. And at the western border of Switzerland, actually, just in Evian, 2 weeks ago, we had the G7 summit. And one of the products of this summit was actually the G7 vision on AI openness, opportunities, and shared language. And before we continue to the panel and to the presentation of all the different projects that we have here, I would actually like to share this G7 vision as a PDF in the chat. And this is a kind of a cheat sheet for all the participants when we have the discussions later, so we have a shared language. I'm putting it in the chat now, and it's a three-page document. You'll have most importantly the principles and the typology in pages 2 and 3. And maybe you can have a look over there when we talk about AI openness and what we understand on things like AI weight and open source in general. So we have a common understanding. But I won't take too much of your time and now introduce our panelists. We are lucky to have 3 expert panelists today who have a lot of practical experience with open source AI and open source LLMs. We have Paul. He's an AI strategist, developer, and technical advisor at Cedia. And Paul will tell us about ALIA today. Andre, he's a chief science officer at TransPerfect and associate professor at Instituto Superior Técnico. And Paul will talk about EuroLLM today. And Arthurs, as CEO and chairman of the board at Tilde, will tell us about TildeOpen LLM. And without further ado, I would like to give the word to Paul so he can tell us about ALIA.
Perfect. So good morning, everyone, and thank you to the OSOR team for inviting me to be here today. It's a pleasure. So I would like in this short presentation to introduce ALIA, that is a Spanish open and public AI infrastructure for language technologies, mainly in Spanish and our official language like Catalan, Galician, Basque, and Valencian. Okay, so if you can move the next slide, perfect. So before starting, well, you introduced me, so I just want to say that, well, my name is Paul. Oh, sorry, yeah. So my name is Paul Brantegen. Well, I work as AI technical advisor, and just a little bit clarification. The CEDIA is Spanish Secretariat of State for Digitalization and Artificial Intelligence, because sometimes it's an acronym and maybe not everyone knows. So perfect. So in this session, I would like to introduce ALIA, how it is, as I said before, a Spanish public AI infrastructure. Later, I will move to ALIA and openness, like looking in the data, models, weights, pipelines, and documentation that we built around this infrastructure, and we make it available, and how even others can reuse all these assets. And finally, the last point is I will close with some of the challenges that we faced along the way, such, for example, licensing, versioning, deployment, and of course, that is not less important, adoption. So I will start with the context about the project. So thank you. So give you context about Spain, we have been working a lot of language technologies for many years. This year, I'm glad that this effort has been recognized by the AI Index report, which mentions one of our main projects, the Spanish Language Technology Plan. And it helped in some way to create the conditions for the current ALIA project. So one thing is that is running the AI Index is that they say that these projects are 2019, but I changed it because it started at 2015 finally. So this is like a main, just a little bit clarification, because it's running in the AI Index that we already told with them. And I think this is an important point, because in the Spanish administration, we were really lucky that we have people with clear vision at the time that understood the importance of language technologies, both from the perspective of sovereignty in terms of linguistic and cultural way, and as well in the practical impact of the NLP tools that we could have in our processing of large volume of mainly of textual information. So this plan was like the starting point for several initiatives in this field, and and I would like to talk about one more recent that is called ELENIA. So if you can change to the next slides. Yep. Thanks. So this ELENIA was like the first initiative that I would like to mention, because it's one of the main initiatives that helped to develop later ALIA. And it is a coordinated project focused on language technologies for Spanish language and co-official, as I said before, Catalan, Basque, Galician, and other ones. So it has been led by the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, the BSC, in coordination with different institutions across Spain. The project generated many resources, for example, corpus, adapted language models, benchmark, and as well practical prototypes to support adoption. So if you want to check more about it, you have down shown below the URL. So if you can change to the next slide, thank you. So many of the resources of ELENIA has been used later and they have been part of the ALIA project, which started 2024. ALIA was like it was built on this work, but as well adds like new capabilities that are even more important for the current generation of AI models. So, for example, large-scale computing, optimized dataset and pipelines, and more advanced evaluation methods for this kind of models. So, as in the previous initiative, adoption was really important. So we put a lot of focus on developing concrete use cases for the public administration using ALIA. This is a project called GovTelLab that a lot of countries have similar projects. And well, in our idea was to introduce as well these sovereign technologies and infrastructure in the development of these use cases. So this is as well another point that I would like to think is really important, that the talent that is being developed around this initiative is important. This is only not just about like developing models and data set. It is also about to train teams with the skills needed to develop this kind of assets, something that is really important. So I would like to go a little bit deeper in about the ALIA model. So to make more concrete, if you can change to the next slide. Yeah, I would like to talk just about some models that we developed during this project. So for example, the flagship, I will say, is the ALIA 40B billions, that is a foundational model. Later, we have the Salamandra family, and later models that are easy to adapt and deploy. And as well, we have like more task specific oriented models that, for example, a model burn for classification, NER, and domain specific NLP tasks. And well, and finally, we have for voice and stuff like that, for example, models like a fine-tuned whisper version for speech recognition that it improved the way we extract text from voice in our language. So the idea is like to cover different needs and models for different use cases that we can need in our language. So if you can change to the next slide. I have already mentioned that some of the values behind this initiative, but I would like to say that first, that is really important is the sovereignty. Later, I will say that the other value is openness. I mean, the objective is not only to develop models, but to make them with data sets and tools available so they can be reused. And the third point, I think, as I said before, that is all the talent and ecosystem that it generates. The final pillar, I will say, as I told before, that is important is the adoption. That as well is important for a sovereignty. I mean, we need the models, but as well that they are adopted by the industry. So if you could change, thanks. So about ALIA and openness, for us, it is not just about publishing model weights. Of course, they are important, but there are other parts. So we made as well data sets, language sources, and documentation available, and as well information about how it could be reused. We have another important point that is the pipeline. It is important because it could be reused with new models, and it's going to be easier we adapt with new data sets. And finally, as I said before, the reuse conditions and terms are also important. We have a really permissive license, for example, Apache 2.0 that allows us to developers to reuse it really freely, you know. So if you can change the next slide, I'm going to be brief with the last slides that we have. We all know that open source is really important. It supports innovation and research. I mean, open source models share knowledge, and it gives research and developers the tools to inspect, adapt, and even improve what already exists. Second, is important because it helps to build the ecosystem and sovereignty. And third, it improves like trust and transparency with we use these kind of tools. If you can move to the next slide. So finally, and before I finish, I would like to say that for us, the definition on open source is really important. We have debates around that like before the regulation, but when it arrived, it was more important, and it wasn't just a debate. It was more important to precise meaning of what is open source, because of course it could affect to how our global base, no? And Finally, if you can move to the next one. Yep. So this is something that we will briefly discuss in the session. I just simply want to talk about it, but later we will go deeper. Licensing is not easy when you have multiple assets. For example, the data is not easy. Sometimes when you download the data, that the licenses are open. So sometimes it's like multiple licenses combined that makes it difficult to know exactly which license should be this kind of data set. Versioning and release formats, this is something that as well we will discuss. Asynchronous openness time, we open source sometimes data after models. And lastly, inference and deployments capacities, that is important as well for allowing enterprise to use them. And finally, the adoption requires more than publishing a model. So I think it's all. And if you can move to the last one, I just said that, well, open source is a strategic choice for us. It's really important. Definition matters. And third, infrastructure and know-how determine the adoption. So it is really important as well. So thank you, everybody. Sorry, because I used 1 minute and a half more. Yeah.
No, thank you, Paul. Great. Actually, we would still have time for one small question from the audience. I don't see anything in the chat. So obviously you will have the time to ask questions, but if you have one immediate question to anything Paul just said, before we move on to Andre. Okay, looks great. No immediate reactions, Paul, so we will have the time to discuss ALIA in detail later. So we move over to Andre with EuroLLM.
Okay,
the floor is yours. Yeah.
Can you hear me well?
Yes.
All right. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm going to present EuroLLM and some of our ongoing work, which aims to extend EuroLLM in new directions. Can we move to the next slide? So this is work that has been done by several people, including my group called Sardine in Lisbon, University of Lisbon, which has been funded by a couple of projects. And it should not be a surprise to anyone at this point with the recent events, for example, with Anthropic, that it's very important for Europe to think about AI sovereignty. And the main point of this talk, and I think many people will agree, is that open source is a way to try to recover from our current situation compared to the United States and China. All right, so our team has already delivered several models. I'm just listing some of them. So this includes Tower, EuroLLM, XComets, Aerobirds. Can you press the next button? So the most recent one is the 22 billion parameter version of EuroLLM. More recently, we are developing Smurf for EU, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. So these models have been downloaded many times. I think these numbers are outdated. I think by now we surpassed 2 million model downloads. They are all open. They are available in Hugging Face. Anyone can use. They cover different aspects of the pipeline. So can you please? All right. So they cover different aspects that go from filtering, generating. So you can use them together in many different ways. And in fact, we did that in EuroLLM. So now I'm going to talk about the EuroLLM project, which has been developed in a European consortium in the scope of a project called UTTR. So you can see here a picture that we took in one of the project meetings. It's a big European effort. So in the other slide, you could see a bunch of logos with all the universities and institutions that have been involved. And our goal with EuroLLM is to develop the best open European LLMs trained from scratch. So we want to follow, and we are following open source AI principles. So our models are fully open, not just the weights, but all the data and all the procedure to obtaining these models. Everything is documented, and I'm going to point to these resources throughout this talk. We released model in 3 different sizes, ranging from 1.7 billion to 22 billion. These models cover all the official European Union languages, plus some additional languages. So there's 35 languages in total. And in order to train these models, we used an extreme scale grant through EuroHPC of around 1.7 million GPU hours in Mare Nostrum 5. So you can see some statistics about our models. I'm not going to get into details here. The architecture is all similar. It's just like the larger models are scaled versions of the previous ones. Can you move to the next one? So in addition, we also released a lot of data and created data specifically for EuroLLM. This includes EuroWeb, which is multilingual web data filtered with a filter which we also released called EuroFilter. This is a quality filter because in the process of training these models, you need to have like several quality tiers, and we need to make sure that the data that we use in certain stages is high quality. We also filtered parallel data and included substantial parallel data with Comet Kiwi, which was one of the models I mentioned in the beginning. And we also released post-training data, EuroBlocks, which is multilingual and can be reused for other initiatives to train their own models. So this is a plot showing the language mix that we used. So the majority of data is still English, and the main reason for that is that there's way more data in English and in other languages. And also, if we filter by quality, we end up selecting a lot of English data. But we try to have a balance or more balanced data compared to other models. So even though half of the data is English, the other half includes substantial European languages, including low resource ones. Even though you can see that for low resource languages, the proportion is a little bit lower than for higher resource languages. So in the annealing phase, which is the second phase of pre-training, we made things even a little bit more even. And in post-training, we also included, if you can click again, in the post-training, we also included codes, maths, and STEM data to make the model useful for tasks that are not just test-generating tasks. So you can see here some benchmarks. These are multilingual benchmarks. I'm showing models in 2 different sizes, the EuroLLM 9B and the EuroLLM 22B. And in this slide, I'm comparing to other open source models. So models that are fully open, not just the weights, but also the data. I'm listing here Apertus and Olmo, which by the time we did these slides were the biggest competitors in this space, and they still are. Apertus is another European project developed in Switzerland. They developed models with 8 billion and 70 billion parameters. And in these different benchmarks, you can see that EuroLLM performs quite well, generally better than Apertus and Olmo. Olmo is a bit at a disadvantage here because it was not designed to be multilingual. It has some multilingual understanding capabilities, but it's primarily an open source model for English. But if you compare with Apertus, even the larger version of Apertus, which has more than 3 times more parameters than EuroLLM, EuroLLM is still above it. Also, taking also into account the fact that it was trained in less tokens, 4 trillion versus 15 trillion. So, however, if you bring to the table open weight models, so these are models where the weights are open, but the data where they are trained is not open. There are some details about the training procedure that is not public and so on. Then you can see that there is still a gap. So I'm showing here models like Mistral, Llama, Gemma, Qwen, and so on. So there is still a gap excluding, if you can make another click, if we exclude machine translation benchmarks, which are the last 3 in these plots, you can see that EuroLLM is state-of-the-art or close for all these 3 machine translation benchmarks. So this is really a sweet spot of this model. If you want to use it for translating data across these different languages, this model is actually a pretty good choice. Okay, if you can click another one. So here's some information about who is using this model. So there is in different industry sectors in the translation, localization, finance industries, also in the public administration, which I think is a relevant topic for this workshop today. So in Portugal, there is a project called ALIA, which is a specialization of EuroLLM for European Portuguese that we are developing together with a government agency, which is working on the reform and modernization of the state. And the application here is public administration. So we can talk a little bit more in the panel, maybe, about how this process went. And in addition to that, there is also some collaboration with NVIDIA. If you can move to the next slide. So we work together with NVIDIA to deploy a more efficient version of the model. This is actually not the most recent 9B model, but the previous one that was done last year, where the goal is to make these suitable for efficient and seamless deployment. So there was a video in this slide, but it's not playing now, but it's not important. That was illustrating how this would go. And in the most recent NVIDIA GTC events, you can see here the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, presenting the different sovereign AI initiatives that NVIDIA is partnering with, and listed EuroLLM as one of them. So you can see more details in the technical reports and the different data and code releases that we did. So if you want, you can scan these QR codes and take a look. Everything is in Hugging Face. Can you move on to the next one? So I'm now going to use the remaining minutes to
Yes, Andre, actually, the remaining minutes are minus. If you could sum it up, maybe in the next 2-3 minutes, so we will also have time for the panel. We can also come back to the slides during the panel.
So maybe the easiest is you can just pass through all the slides, and I will talk in the meantime. So we are extending EuroLLM to be multimodal and to do reasoning. You can keep clicking. So we want a model that supports vision in addition to language, speech. We are also working on having reasoning in this model. There is another project that is running in Jupyter, another supercomputer in AeroHPC, where another extreme scale project where we are doing this work. And one particular thing that we are doing, and now you can click many times. So one specific thing that we are doing is to adapt the model to do long contexts. You can click several times to reach the end, because there's a slide there. You can move along that. Maybe jump to the last slide. So we are extending EuroLLM to be able to afford long contexts so that it can perform reasoning and handle multimodal data. Right. These are some papers that we have published on this topic recently. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you, Andre. I have also shared one of the papers in the chat, so if anybody wants to go and look into detail, they can also go through the link. All right, then last but not least, we move on to Tilde with Arthurs. Arthurs, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you. So do you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Yes, and also a very, very warm welcome from my side. Yeah, first of all, I have to confess from the perspective that while I was preparing this presentation, it was a couple of weeks ago, the next statement was a pure theory, but now it's already a fact. So can we move to the next slide? Yes, the fact is well known that actually, US public administration government made a decision to limit Europeans to access to one of the most powerful GTP models. And this is the reality which we have to face. And there was in previous presentations, the clear statements that actually Europe must to have their own AI on which we can rely and trust. This is now absolutely a pure clarity. And yes, let's move to the next slide. And no, let's come back. I will say, I will say when. Yeah, but also from the European side, so we are not super responsive from the perspective that we are joking in industry, we are champions in our regulations. So there is industry really not clarity. What is allowed, what kind of data is allowed to use in AI, what kind of AI solutions can be allowed to use it in industries, and this really blocks developing AI, developing our European AI applications, and this is really not facilitating the AI development in Europe. But the European Commission really understands that we have a clear issue, and there need to be done something to develop our own European AI applications, and there are several activities like AI factories, gigafactories. But one of the really practical activities, very focused activities, was made a couple of years ago. Can we move to next slide? There was this AI Boost program, through which there was this mission to select European companies which will deliver really practical LLMs for the society, for the community, to be further developed as the foundation for the European AI practical business applications. And I'm super proud about my company, Tilde, which were selected by European Commission really to develop this next frontier European model. Let's move on. But I believe this decision was not made by the coincidence, because we are already in the European discussions about the AI, about the frameworks, about the architectures along the several decades. We were participating in discussion in France. We are also supporting European public administration initiatives in Moldova, in Ukraine. So we are already in this field of AI development for several decades. Let's move on, because this AI kind of topic is in our DNA. We are working with the language technologies, with AI for more than 3 decades. So Tilde started by developing kind of a simple tool, proofreading solutions, machine translation, speech recognition, and now already for more than 5 years we are in the field of AI. Let's move on to the next slide. And yeah, our really practical business applications, which are built on top of AI technology, which we are developing by ourselves and with the partners across the Europe, are already quite well recognized across the Europe. Our business applications are used not only in public administration but also in the private sector. So we have quite many representatives from the banking industries, from public administrations, from the insurances. So a lot of industries are using our secure, reliable applications. Let's move on to the next slide. But yeah, but so far, of course, our most advanced and actually state-of-the-art technology is this TildeOpen LLM, which we developed within the support this AI Boost initiative program. So what we did, we built this fully open source, like it was stated before in previous presentations, model. It's quite large, so 30 billion parameter model, which supports all European languages. Additionally, it's also support Ukraine and Balkan country languages. And for this critical mission, we were assigned to use a Lumi supercomputer for more than 2 million GPU hours. But the goal for this exercise was not to develop yet another LLM model, still open source, but kind of our mission was to develop something unique and something designed particularly for the Europe, which address European values. Let's move on. And what we did differently. So first of all, our one of the goals was build really trustworthiness LLM model on the results which we can really trust and rely. What we did, we excluded a lot of this Russian created propaganda data. So there was a massive initiative when we filtered out a huge amount of this Russian data. So this is one element which we did completely in a unique way. Let's move to the next slide. Yeah, and we can see that this infection is already being visible in publicly available models, but probably you can spot it already by yourself. Let's move on. Another element which we did completely different. So what we did, we avoided this generic approach by having one English language, this centric approach. We secured that each language is equally represented. So there is now this one language dominance. And this was incorporated in the data preparation, in data selection, and also in the model architecture itself. So let's move on. And this really delivered the performance of the model. So if we compare this model against the similar model, the way how we prepared the data, the way how we prepared the model architecture really delivers the performance. So this our TildeOpen model is comparable, more efficient in terms of the processing speed and also in terms of using infrastructure. So it can be really used efficiently and in a smaller scale infrastructure when we are talking on-premise deployment. Let's move on to the next slide. And one of the questions, of course, on our side was how efficient or actually how capable the model we were able to train by ourselves. And one of the exercises to whom we compared this model was machine translation. And what we did, we actually compared this TildeOpen performance against ChatGPT production model, and we were actually quite surprised that actually the way how we prepared the data, the way how we selected the data, the way how we prepared the architecture really delivered the quality. And what we can see, the quality for translation task is almost equal for the against ChatGPT, considering the fact that it is by 60 times smaller than this OpenAI leading model. Let's move on to the next slide. And what we do have currently. So we have this, I believe, quite excellent foundation as a LLM model, which is available on the Hugging Face. So you can easily find it by typing TildeOpen LLM, and it could be further extended to the use in public administration as the core LLM. It can be fine-tuned toward to the designed tasks like translation or to create your own kind of ChatGPT version, which could be used in-house internally. Or it could be even further developed towards to the specific more in-depth language usage or some specific designed use case. Let's move on. And and last but not least, actually, it is this model already can be really practical tested, used from our website. So we are providing this model for a free use for several tasks like translation, summarization, so you can upload a larger document or a larger text and have a short summary. And we also provide this model as for this chatbot scenario. So you can use this as your personalized ChatGPT version. And so it's open to be used from the cloud, or there is this option also to have this physical deployment on a selected infrastructure or in a private cloud. So this on-premises version. Let's move on. And I am almost perfect in time. And last but not least, so if there is a need or a challenge to develop LLM towards to your selected unique use case, so feel free to challenge me to address any kind of the questions. And if there is a need for some custom data or custom solution developments, also I'm at your disposal, so feel free to get in touch with me. There is available email, or we can for sure connect in LinkedIn. Yes, this was a sprint from my side, and I'm happy that I managed it in 10 minutes. It was challenging.
Yeah. I'm guessing maybe you can also go further into, if you have experience with that, how much does in general misinformation influence European open source LLM projects?
Honestly speaking, it's very difficult to judge from the perspective that this Russian propaganda infection creation, it's kind of a new topic. when we were training our model, this was completely new element which we discovered and which we counted in our LLM development. But what we can clearly observe that like in US models which are publicly available, we can spot this infection when we are asking very sensitive questions. For example, about our region history, there is obviously misleading information. This issue is already spotted by the US companies, and they are creating those railguards about kind of managing this misleading information. How far this is in other open source models is very difficult to judge, honestly speaking. What we did from our side, we published, I believe, in Hugging Face. If it is not yet done, it will be done in next couple of weeks, a list of those infected websites which were with the purpose created by Russian propaganda. So what could be done? You can just spot, is this website included in this training data? So this would be kind of one lead just to navigate and think about this infected information.
Thank you. It's a very interesting topic. You know, you have the companies now who do search engine optimization for AI searches. Obviously, if you can target it as a company, also on that side, you could technically also target as a nation state. But okay, let's move on to the panel. And I would like to start with our first question. And for our first question, we would like to make it a bit more practical. So some of you, I think Andre already had some inputs, and also Arthur's you too, on how to start using your models. But if one of our participants today, for example, a public administration or anybody else, if they want to start your model today, how would they start, and what would be on your side your niche or your USP that you would say, okay, this is actually my model is for this use case in public administration that would help you the most? Who wants to take the question first?
I can take it. Usually, in our case, we are at the beginning facing with the question. So, what is this particular use case which we are targeting to be solved? And by answering this question, then we are kind of designing what kind of model, what kind of use case, and actually what need to be done to address this designed use case. Because it could be quite a simple one. If we are talking about the translation, then there is available already kind of off the shelf, ready to use deployments or integrations. But if the use case is rather the complex, where there is involvement of data analysis, some sort of data extraction, and then building something on top of this knowledge which is extracted, then we are talking about more complex use case, and then we have to kind of design and think what kind of tools, what kind of models could be used, or if there is need even for fine-tuning for already available models. So it's honestly speaking quite a complex question, but the starting point is to discuss the design use case with this expert, and then develop it further to the practical application. But one suggestion, maybe one advice, which actually I will share. We were failing at the beginning, like a couple of years ago. The ambition usually in public administration, actually also in private sector, is at the beginning to build a spaceship, a huge, massive AI project, which will basically kind of cover everything. And usually this is a very clear path to failure. It is usually like a long-term, many years project without a practical result. So my advice is to pick really maybe a small one, to have this kind of readiness, understanding how it is working, is it working, and then develop it steadily forward, extending, expanding. Because one thing is develop the AI technology, the other element actually to build this competence in-house, how to use the AI. So this is kind of two-way communication.
Okay. So to paraphrase a little, from my understanding, is it shouldn't be LLM driven. It should be more use case driven,
Exactly.
and then be having a starting point and then expanding from there. Okay. So instead of trying to build a rocket ship, you maybe try to build a fuselage or a cockpit and then see how the rocket ship looks like after. And how about you, Paul? How if someone
Yeah.
wants to use ALIA, how?
Actually, I totally agree with Arthur's. I think it's one of the main reasons that some projects fail is because they want to go like to the big AI project without evaluate the implications that could have. I mean, it's not only just put the tool, it's as well to adapt the people to use it. So sometimes it's not just to put the AI assistant, it's how people get value from that. So I really agree with Arton. In our case, in Spain, we what we did is like we did a formulaire, like a questionnaire, sorry, that we sent over multiple ministers. And we were asking, like, for example, questions about what problems they would like to solve, what data they need, how will the system will be used in practice, and as well, as I said before, that is important is how prepared are the people that are going to use this kind of tool. No, as I said before, it's not just only to put it, so as well how it's going to people is going to interact with it and how comfortable are they are with it. So we did a questionnaire that we sent to several ministers, and based on their answers, what we did is filter and prioritize some use cases. For give you numbers, we received around 300 requests and ended up selecting 19. So it wasn't an easy process, but we some of the criteria that we used are really aligned with Arthur's things that he was saying before. And after doing all these kind of projects, we some of them were more useful and useful than others, of course. But we are not working on continuing some of them because they give a lot of value for the administration. So we are working right now to deploy them because they were really value. So I really align with what Arthur said, that maybe we need to focus on a small projects that gives a lot of the value. You don't need like to be the AI project to do it, and change the perception that the generative AI is only an AI assistant. We could do a lot more things with this kind of models that can give you a lot of value to the public administrations. And this is the thing I would like to add. Yeah. To his answer. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. And Andre, from what I understand, EuroLLM's USP, similar also to ALIA, is actually the multilinguality, right? So the use case is actually really having many languages and then translation. Maybe having the same question, maybe you can also a bit elaborate, because I want to build on that question with you also now. Is our European niche just multilinguality, or do you also maybe have some vision models, or in general, could at least our multilinguality compete with the flagship models in the US, for example?
Yeah, these are very good questions, and I agree with Arthur's and Paul on the fact that there is a tendency sometimes to try to build a big spaceship that makes it complicated to start experimenting with simple applications. I can share some insights about how LLM is already being used by the public administration in Portugal. So as I mentioned in my talk, there is a specialization of LLM for European Portuguese that we have been working in the last year. And that whole project was designed to be used for public administration and other applications like education, culture, science, and so on. But the way it's being worked is there is an agency for the reform and modernization of the states that is incorporating ALIA in their systems in a RAG setup where they want to mix a language model with their internal databases for answering questions to citizens, help them solving bureaucratic problems and so on. And this is one example where these kind of systems can be used, and you really don't need to buy a system from a big tech company that is non-European to do this sort of work. So for in general, EuroLLM, this is an example that illustrates how we can use it in Portugal, but EuroLLM was designed precisely to represent the different languages, and because we have all the official EU languages there, and any other state can do the same. The steps are actually quite simple. They are not complicated. You just need to download the model from Hugging Face. It's there. Everything is documented, so you can double check which data was used to train the models. You have all the information available. You need to try to choose the right model size for you. For some applications, you might not need the 22 billion model. You might want to go with the 9B or even the 1.7B if you have deployment restrictions. And then you need to integrate the model with your internal data using some additional systems like a RAG system, something to integrate the LLM with the other technologies. And of course, this can only work if there are either people working for these institutions that make these integrations, or if you work together with the teams that develop models to make that possible. So I think this is maybe what sometimes blocks things, because for many entities, they don't have teams that are able to do the technical work to do this integration, and it's much easier for them just to buy like a full system sold by a big commercial machine, typically a non-European company like Microsoft, OpenAI, whatever, and they have the complete solution deployed. But I think there should definitely be an incentive for the public administration to build sovereign solutions. The advantage of doing that is that, for example, if you have something that interacts with your citizens, you don't want this data to go outside Europe, right? You want the data to stay here. You don't want to be dependent on the functionalities that are built outside Europe. And we all have talked about the recent events with Anthropic, and I'm sure more events like this will happen in the future. So Europe needs to wake up and to start doing the work that is needed to start using these things and deploy them. I think, do you have any other? You mentioned
Yeah, I
something
think
about
we are building actually to exactly the second question. Maybe Teote, you can change the slide, and this question also aligns with one of the questions in the chat from Kiaran. So, obviously multilinguality, great niche for us in Europe. I mean, I'm joining from Switzerland. We have 4 languages here, and we do regularly. Someone who is French speaking, they just present in French, I answer in German, and somehow it works. We could also discuss maybe it was a good thing that people managed to understand each other in different languages, and how AI could still support understanding other languages better and not just translating. But still, you could say, okay, if you have a Mythos level LLM, that will just do everything better because it's just that much more powerful. And now, we just had over the weekend another news with GPT 5.6 Sol that will also be restricted, right? So now the question is, are we in the AI world gonna have maybe a 2-class society, and maybe in Europe will be in the lower class, right? So we talked about the niches, but is there a future where we can catch up and where we can say, okay, we have our niche projects, we are very strong in multilinguality, maybe we can even keep up, but do we have to maybe work together, right? Maybe that's the reason why we all are here, to have a European flagship, so we can, like the Chinese or like the US, we can say, okay, maybe we are not always the best on the benchmarks, but we are at least on the benchmarks, and we are in the race. Arthurs, what do you think? Is there a world that we can catch up?
Actually, I would reformulate the question. Are there any other options? Of course they are, but I believe those options are not in favor for our European values. And how I see it from the perspective that actually we can develop competitive AI applications jointly together at the European society in terms of the industry, by many private sector universities, so building really jointly AI applications with clear focus, not to try to copy and address those very powerful generic Chinese and US applications, but to focus on a downstream it towards to a selected use case. For example, actually, we prove it by ourselves. This is doable by having competitive machine translation, and by selecting a very specific niche, we can build and deliver competitive solutions from the Europe. Yeah, so this would be, actually, this would be how I see it. Yeah, it does make sense to compete against very generic use case, because we have to face the reality. US companies are years ahead. They have infrastructure which is currently not comparable against our European infrastructure, but still we are in a good track, I believe, by gigafactories, by AI factories which are already in place, and we can see already that there are appearing in Europe built models dedicated towards to a specific tasks, in which they are quite excellent, I would say. But no, it's kind of, we are still starting.
Thank you, Arthurs. And Paul, what do you think? Do you agree? And I would also ask maybe one additional sub-question within this. Do you think if we manage to develop a flagship system in Europe, is it possible to do that open source?
This is a really good question. Well, I think that Europe is in a complicated situation in the sense that we know that well, the United States and China is ahead. For me, what gives me a little hope is that it's true that Chinese was really fast to adapt to the and to be at the pair of to United States. It's true that we are not the same, but it gives us hope, because it's what I mean is that maybe in 2 years we could reduce the gap, but well, it's not easy. About the second question. Well, I think that open source is really valuable. It gives like the rich. For me, what I found really interesting with the Chinese open source models is that they allow to accelerate the research of new architectures, new models. I mean, for us, for example, it was really important as well to develop ALIA, this kind of open source. But so. I think that the papers, the documentation, the information could be really helpful. I'm not sure about if it will be possible to open all the data, because I'm sorry, because there is right now, I'm not sure if you heard, but I don't know, just now there is doing some works.
We can hear it, Paul, it's okay.
Yeah, sorry. But for example, I'm not sure if open all the data will be possible, because it's a valuable asset and the enterprise know it, so it's not easy to open it, to have it really open. So I'm not sure if fully open source will be possible, but maybe more open than, for example, the American models, I will say.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Maybe, Andre, to give the question also to you. Arthur, do you want to answer directly to Paul?
No, I just but I would like to share some interesting conversation which I had with on this particular topic with the German public administration one country ministry. And an interesting thought, and actually this thought is absolutely in line how we see the development of European AI, because what they shared and actually how they, as a public administration, look on the open source, and what they shared, and actually what they are currently doing, they're completely changing from the licensing model. From the honestly speaking, majority of those license came from US companies to open source. And they also have this clear understanding: open source is not equal, and it does not mean free of charge. They understand that open source requires some investment, but this investment will be made for public use, for public good. So, for example, they are developing some certain of functionality or integration, it will be automatically publicly available. And with this mindset, they made the decision to go public administration to the open source community. And by this, they understand by investment, they are strengthening up European AI society in terms of the development. And in the same way, they understand that by continuing paying the license, actually they are straightening up US companies by not only paying for the service, but also by sharing the data. So making those US companies more advanced and actually increasing this gap between US and Europe. So and actually,
it's an unfair competition, right? If we are open
exactly.
and they are closed,
Exactly.
Exactly.
I understand it. And actually, and this is this, I would say, the key element in our mindset which we have to shift. Maybe to lower our expectation in terms of the quality, but switch to the European solutions, and by switching, straightening them up. And this is how I would say this fundamental decision which we have to make at this point.
I'm referring to the G7 vision, right? Principle 2 says openness, AI openness is a spectrum. And I understand that you're making the case, if you always go maximum on the openness of the spectrum, then we might actually lose the case against the other companies because they can leverage. While we are trying to close the gap, we are actually opening the gap and helping them out. Before we move to the open section with the participants, and then we will also address the questions in the chat. Andre, I would like to also give you the floor to address this question, and maybe in addition, as a closing statement of this panel, you could also tell us from your point of view, what, aside from $50 billion and throw money at the problem, what would you need from the community in general to maybe close the gap or to foster innovation with AI openness?
Yeah, I would go further. I mean, the question is not if open source can be used to compete. I think it's the only way. Like the only chance Europe has to compete with the US and China is to embrace open source and open weight models. As others have mentioned, Europe is already 2 years behind. The advantage that you can get with open source is that you can move faster. And there's been many occasions, in the last years where many people thought, oh, it's impossible to compete with OpenAI and ChatGPT. And then you have an open model that actually might not be as good, but gets close. And then, research moves very, very fast. OpenAI is no longer the main leader in this space. There's other companies from US and China that are pushing the frontier. So Europe is behind. It's behind China. It's behind the US. It's also behind in open source. But I think if you want to have any chance, and I think to me this is really, there is really no choice. This event with Anthropic, I hope they really work finally as a wake-up call. It's really open source or perish, and we need to move fast. I think a problem that we have in Europe is that everything is so slow. Even access to supercomputers, access to these extreme scale projects, and I guess Arthur's know it also from AI Boost and other projects that Tilde has participated. it doesn't make any sense. How can we wait 6 months to get an answer for a project, getting like a very detailed technical review when in 6 months everything changes, right? So we need to completely change this mindset.
Arthur
this
is
is very important.
nodding like he's at a heavy metal concert, so I think you agree, Arthur. Before we move on, because you mentioned China, I would actually like to include one of the questions in the chat, and I'm open, like really just in 1 minute, I'm opening this to all three of you again, because Tony Shannon is asking, is there maybe room here to collaborate with Chinese open source models? So because now it's in terms of sovereignty, if we see that as a spectrum too, instead of saying, okay, we are too dependent from the US, maybe we could say if we collaborate with the Chinese or with China or in general with Asia, we would at least have some kind of leverage against US saying, hey, we are not depending on you. Do you think that would be a move in the right direction or not? Just really a quick final statement from all of you.
Maybe I can, if I can. Okay, so I think we have thought about China as a big taboo in this space. I think we cannot replace the US by China. We really need to do the work in Europe to advance open source. But we should look at which opportunities do we have with the labs in China that are open, at least open weights. And this is already happening. How many companies are already fine-tuning Quen models or other models that are developed in Chinese labs? If you go to what is being done now in agentic AI, there's new models from GLM that appear to be quite competitive, with Anthropic and recent OpenAI models. So at least we should get the knowledge from these labs. And if the only way to get knowledge is to interact with researchers in those places. In my experience, in the few interactions that we have had, I have had very good experiences. They don't hide information. They share information. They don't share everything that they have. But I've noticed a lot more openness from some of these labs than what I've seen in other places. Definitely more openness than in Google or OpenAI, where no one communicates anything about what is being done there. So I think we should not treat China differently from the US. We should really do the work in Europe to develop our tools, but we should not exclude them from any collaboration. This is my opinion.
I just experienced with clients too, more clients asking about cloud solutions like Alibaba Cloud, or other than, it was such big taboo, right? And now it's like, other than the US hyperscalers, actually it's almost on the same level sometimes.
Maybe if I can just, one very small point, we are talking a lot about models, but one of the reasons Europe is behind is because it's not just models, you need to look at the entire ecosystem, right? So this includes cloud providers, includes the chip manufacturers. We need to start somewhere, right? But we need to take into account that to compete, we need to have all layers, not just look at models.
Arthur, so what is your opinion on collaborating with China? And please make it shorter than Andre.
Okay.
No problem.
I will try my best. Yeah. You see, so Tilde's kind of mindset and vision was always in building a partnership and to be open. So this is what kind of in our core how we are partnering across the globe. And the main, I would say, answer on this question is under which conditions we are partnering, whether with Chinese or US companies. And this is the key question. But of course, I believe the strength is in partnership, in building open, trustable, reliable relationships.
Thank you. Paul?
Fine. So to finish, I think we are already collaborating in some way, because when we are working on open weights model and stuff like that, and they have more permissive license than other open weights models, so they give us value. For example, we can distill some data, we can use the architecture of Queen. So I think in some way we are already collaborating, but everybody that wants to share knowledge in the research field and grow together, I think is fine to talk with them.
Thank you, Paul. And I see there are some very interesting statements and questions also in the chat. I think this is a good place to move on and open the discussion to the participants too. And Teuta, I will hand over to you to have a quick introduction to Pingo and how we can do the pods.
Yes, thank you, Yusuf. So now we're going to move on to the workshop session of today's event. So essentially, we will welcome all the participants to use Pingo, that is an open source tool, and we will share also the QR code and the link very shortly. But essentially, it's just a couple of closed or open questions. And after each question, we will give you around 2 minutes, to answer. And then we will look at the results together as well and discuss. So yeah, there's just one small thing to note about Pingo when it comes to the open answers. If you put your answer in the box and then just click vote, you will not be able to submit another answer. So if you want to submit more than one, you should click add a field and then submit the multiple answers all together, clicking vote only once. So now you can connect to the Pingo tool, and we will have the first question running. I will give you a couple of seconds just to scan the QR code or put the link. Yes, of course, we can put the link in the chat. And then we can go on to the first question. The link is already there, but you have also the QR code here. Now the question is open, and it will be open for around 2 minutes so that you can submit your answers, and then we're going to debrief all together. But essentially the question is, how would you describe your organization's experience with open source AI on the spectrum from having started to looking into it and then actively trying it out or using it? If everybody has answered, maybe I can close the poll. I see there are 34 of you connected, so I think most of you are answering. So I'll show you the results as well by bringing them to the screen here. All right, so we see that most of you are either using it or looking into it. So that's very interesting. And then there are also some of you trying it out. And then a minority also has not started yet. I don't know if there's any comments to this or any questions. Otherwise, we can move to the second question.
Yeah, I think it's more or less expected in a workshop like this that we have people who have already experience with that. So yeah, let's move on to the next question.
Yes. So then we have the second question, which is, what are you using or exploring open source AI for? So here we're looking at the use cases. I mean, we have a couple here on the screen. So translating documents, summarizing or drafting text, answering citizen or staff questions here for public administrations, analyzing or classifying documents, processing images, audio or video, automating internal workflows, or again, as when you haven't started, maybe you don't have the use cases yet. So I'll leave around 1 minute to answer to this one.
And maybe while the question is being answered, one of the interesting choices here is actually processing images, audio, or video. And you know, my open source journey actually started for the Swiss Armed Forces. It was about object detection. Maybe some of you know the YOLO V8 version. And Andre, you remember one of the questions I asked you, do you think, do you have any vision models, or are we just focusing on languages? How would you rate our capabilities in computer vision and processing of images, audio, and video, and maybe then even generating it compared to the US and Chinese models?
Yeah, we are currently adding vision and speech to EuroLLM. So some of these things are already working at the basic level. For example, to do OCR, you know, it's still behind the closed models. You know, to be completely honest, but it's the quality is not that bad. So I think I don't think those are the harder problems. I think the harder problems have more to do with, for example, agentic tasks, long horizon agentic tasks, planning, things like that. Those will take a bit of a longer time. Vision is not super hard, in my opinion. So I think what we have could already be useful to scan documents and these kind of things.
Let's see if it matches with the poll results then.
Yes.
Do we have a lot of, so because automating internal workflows, 6 probably matches most with agentic AI. So if, let's see. Yeah, it's so summarizing. I think we're good, right? We can manage with the open LLMs that we have represented here, translating to and automating internal tasks. If I think of things like OpenClaw, for example, that's probably just going off your statement, Andre, something there we would need to catch up, and I would place it 4th. Do you think that's maybe just people didn't have the experience yet, or not? Because it takes courage to actually handle agentic systems or agentic AI. And, you know, it takes some security measures. If we see how OpenClaw started, there was like more bad than good. What do you think, or what is your reaction? And now also open to all of 3 of you on the poll results, and specifically on automating internal workflows, which I would say towards agentic systems.
Maybe I can start. I think it's quite encouraging. So some of the things that I see have the highest percentage are things that are already supported by text-based models. You know, EuroLLM supports translation. It's actually quite strong at translation specifically. Summarization, answering questions. This is how it's used in the Portuguese public administration. So it's interesting to see that these are the biggest needs. So this means that maybe a lot of public administrations in different countries can already start using these models and experimenting.
Yeah, and I would even flip the bit and say probably we have the niche in all these models because it came from a need, right? So the push probably to specialize in all of that was because we saw all of these use cases. So actually, if we say in a isolated Europe, no pun intended, hopefully we won't be completely isolated, we would be not doing so bad with the models that we have, matching the use cases we have. Arthurs, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. This clearly shows that in Europe we have this not a disadvantage but advantage multilinguality. And yeah, those models which we have already in our disposals are quite competitive, I would say, against the US and Chinese models. Yeah, because we have to face that US models are more towards the English language, and the other languages is this kind of second or third class citizens in those models. And yeah, we have already a working technology which to be honest outperforms models, and we have a quite good and promising opportunities about our own open source European technologies. So I'm very positive about this survey, and that really we can deliver.
Yeah, it's nice to say it's not all doom and gloom. Paul, what's
Yeah,
what's
no,
your
I think
opinion?
it's really interesting, these questions and the results. And I think, for example, for us, it's really important, this kind of tools, because, for example, one of the main problems that we have is that we have minority language, for example, like Galician, like Basque, and Catalan in a less way. So these kind of tools, usually we need like an open source model, and to fine tune it to have better results in our language. So this is something that we are working a lot, focusing a lot on generate new data with public hackathons and stuff like that, just to improve our models in our language, because these are really important tasks. In some language doesn't work as good as in English, as Artus Andrew said. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Teuta, maybe we can move on to the next question.
Yes, sure. All right, so here also I saw that some of you have written other in the previous question. So this is an open question, and here you can also answer with that other use cases that you found. But the question here is, in 1 or 2 sentences, or at least keywords, describe the open source AI project you're either currently working on or you're most interested in. So again, here we leave 1-2 minutes for you to answer. All right. Maybe if people have answered, and those of you who maybe have not answered, you can also feel free to join either in the chat or with your mic as well. But let me close the question. And I will show the results as well. So we have working on how to convince clients to use EU open source AI, local chatbot with cheap hardware, flawless software, and open LLMs to provide local inference for specific tasks and use cases. Apertus, which was mentioned in our presentations, translating legal documents, helping the public sector employees for faster reaction, and extending EuroLLM to support multiple modalities and reason to allow executing tools and solve difficult problems. So I don't know if there's any comments on this, maybe Yusuf, any question that comes to mind as well?
Yeah, it's interesting to see working on how to convince clients to use EU open source AI, right? Maybe we can have some pointers from our experts here. So what if you had to make a case for a client, and now we see a general client, maybe more towards public administration, and please in 1 sentence, what would be the case to make in 1 sentence to use an open source AI? So who wants to go first? Arthur. You're already unmuted. So.
Maybe I could quickly reflect on those responses. Interesting that hardware infrastructure is mentioned here. We also noticed through our discussion with the public administration, our customer, that the hardware in Europe is an issue. And that's why, there are activities related to this distillation for the models to make it more smaller and to be more capable to run on a more reasonable hardware. Yeah, but so the question was.
Yeah, if you had to make the case in one sentence on how to convince clients to use an European open source LLM, what would it be?
Usually the case which we are kind of arriving during discussions, what kind of solutions should be used. Yeah, we are arriving through data sharing. So the customer is really ready to share, to send the private data, sensitive data outside of the Europe. Because definitely those data will be analyzed, will be reviewed, and yeah, we don't know about the consequences. So I would say this is one of the main factors.
And maybe if I also could chime in, many of our public customers, they even say sometimes we are building, for example, an on-prem model using European open source models, not because it's the best solution, but to at least start somewhere to build the knowledge internally. So of course, sometimes, so you have to make sure if you want to have the most efficient, usually the hyperscalers are the way to go, because there is a reason why they're called hyperscalers, because on the short term, with a short-term objective, it's the fastest way, right? But if you want to have a long-term thinking, maybe you try to build the knowledge and you try to build an ecosystem, not just a open source AI solution, but a complete ecosystem that would actually be, if let's say the US flips the kill switch, I'm just making it metaphorically, that you could still stay, keep running, and also especially have the internal knowledge.
But actually, on this note, actually there is another angle. Yeah, the option and the most fastest way is to use these kind of open source models from US hyperscalers like Gemmas and Llamas. But actually, by using those models, we don't have any support. But
so it's also about who's maintaining those open source models, right?
Exactly.
I would put that on the openness spectrum, not at max, because if you use an open source model that is maintained by a company or that is maintained by China or US, you still don't have the support, and you still don't know if they get discontinued and don't have control over it. Absolutely, I'm with you, Arthur. Okay, Tirta, let's move on to the next question.
Many thanks. So here we have a question on barriers. So the question is, what are the biggest barriers your organization faces in adopting open source AI? We put here select up to 3 to see what the 3 most biggest challenges are. So as we mentioned before, lack of in-house technical skills, could be legal uncertainty, procurement rules, access to computing infrastructure, or maybe too delayed access, data quality availability, organizational resistance, security, data privacy and ethical concerns, or other.
Actually, not to influence the poll, but in the meantime, maybe we can discuss 7, security, data privacy, and ethical concerns. You know, one thing that we are doing very well here in Europe is regulation. We are always, that's where we are leading the way. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing, you know. I'm always someone who is a bit scared of Skynet in the future anyway. So maybe it's not a bad thing if it's not just all gas and no brake like it's going on in the US right now. Maybe this could be also a case, you know, taking a challenge that it's a regulation could be also maybe a case for European LLMs and AI models that really grew with something like the first drafts of an AI Act, because I'm sure all three of you, you probably saw a first draft of the AI Act very early, and you were thinking already very early before any regulation came out to be compliant.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, to be really compliant. I'm not sure if it's always about the regulation of the or maybe the how clear is the regulation. Sometimes for me the biggest problem that I have is that maybe it is really open, the regulation, so you don't know if you can do that or not. So you go to the worst case. So you don't do. So sometimes like a little bit more of clarification helps a lot. I think we need a lot more that right now on how we can use data. We know that there are already different cases in Europe and trials about this. So I think this will be like the first step, and after it, we will know like how to deal with all of it. This is my opinion. That is not really clear right now what data we can use, because well, we know that there are some articles that say that maybe you can opt out, well, stuff like that. So so I think that first will be like to clarify what is possible to do or not, and later we need to check. And as Andrew and Artur said before, we need to be faster that we are doing right now, because we cannot wait like 2 or 3 more years to take a decision in that sense. Yeah.
And Teota, in the meantime, if you have the answers, you can already blend them in or show them. And Andre, I will also take your comment on this.
Very quickly. So I just want to comment that it's very extremely unfair that if you are developing a closed model, many of these providers use data illegally. But if you are developing an open source project and you want to release your data and so on, you have to go through all the complicated process of investigate if you can use this data. You face the legal consequences if you violate any of these unclear regulations, and this is extremely unfair. So I think it's very important that Europe does something about this, because Anthropic, OpenAI, all of these use infringe copyrights, for example. But you cannot do that with open source models. Part of the quality gap has to do with these as well.
And we can see the results. So actually, data quality availability is the largest category, followed by access to compute infrastructure, and then actually other, which is good because the next question is an open question, so you will be able to explain the other. But yeah, the least category is actually procurement rules and, well, at the same level, the security, data privacy, ethical concerns, and the lack of leadership buy-in. All right. We can move on to the next question. Yeah. And as I said, this is...
Maybe
yeah.
Is there time for asking a very short question? So sure. I was looking at the results from this poll, and the question was, it was the previous question, but it was, what stops you from using open models, right? And the question was something about the data. I'm wondering what exactly this means, right? Because one thing is the model, the other thing is the data. Is this talking about the data that is used to train the models? Is this talking about data that is available in these organizations to interact with the model? Because if that's the case, then the issue still exists if they are using closed models. Or maybe I misunderstood something.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was 5, data quality, data availability. That's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
That's actually interesting. Yeah, I would say depends on how you interpret it, right? But you could say, for example, I like to look also into apparatus. It was mentioned, and one person mentioned that the transparency of training data. That's actually something positive in open source models. And maybe it would go a bit in that area, that the black box, that you don't know where the data was trained on. So I would understand it as, even though the US models, non-open source models, have the black box, we don't know about the training data. There might even be some open source models, because open source doesn't mean also openness with the training data necessarily, right? So I would say that could be something that stops some people. So if you would say, hey, we have transparency with our training data, that would be actually something that solves this problem with 5. This is how I would understand the question. You don't agree, Arthur? How would you understand it?
No, I was like knocking. Yeah, I see quite in the same way. Yeah. This transparency and the clarity. Yeah, I already kind of briefly touched this topic. Actually, blocks the development AI itself in the EU. It actually blocks the investments, because there is no clarity about, is it allowed to use in certain industries AI. What kind of data could be used? There are a lot of elements which are not in our European in favor by having this uncertainty and clarity.
And if we get technical, it can go then into things like machine learning operations or Gen AI operations, because the more transparency you have from a model, if we are thinking in terms of regulation, all the biases and so, because everything, right, biases mostly, if you go into the AI Act and look into the high-risk AI systems, a lot of it is centered around protection of EU citizens and biases. So if we say we have the maximum transparency in training data, for example, that makes, if you find, so it's a black box still, but maybe we can make it a gray box, a bit more transparent box, and then try to keep up with training, let's say with Gen AI ops or ML ops, that in my opinion is not implemented throughout Europe or maybe even throughout the world, not enough yet. So the technical, keeping up on the technical side of things with the models, I think this is something where we could, if there is would be a flagship transparent model, probably it would come out of Europe. So that's maybe one of our strengths.
So this answer was given by the developers and not the users, right? That's what was confusing me, because the question asks about adopting open source AI, but the points that were mentioned are mainly pains for who is developing the models, not the users.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Mixed
we
would need to read the minds of the people who answered the question. But yeah,
maybe people can write in the comments. It could be shed some light.
And in the meantime, I hope you answered. I activated this question as well, just for the sake of time. I will stop it now so we can see the results. And there we have it. So scarce GPU compute resources. Yeah, these are some of the open questions that we have. Bad usage documentation or outdated documentation. Yeah, this is for open source a particular issue. And okay, and then for the sake of
yeah, exactly. I would say I think we can finish the polls here. What I would like to do, we have like 5 minutes. Because we only collected questions from the chat, maybe we can, if some of the participants, and maybe it's the person that goes into the understanding of data availability, Andre, so that would be best. Or if someone has a questions and they actually want to activate the camera and maybe ask a question directly, now you would have the opportunity to do that. Otherwise, we would go towards the end. The workshop.
There's also some questions from before from the chat. For example, from Carlo, he had asked if some of the models from the presenters are already available for a quick testing or deployment in OLAMA, VLLM, or other inference engines. And which
I think it's available in Hugging Face, right? All of you have told that. So all of your models, Paul, I'm not sure on your side, but I think Arthur's and Andre, you already told us that it's available in Hugging Face. Paul, how is it with ALIA? It's the same, right?
Yes, I'm going to share the links. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
And then there was also a question on which open source RAG systems would you recommend?
So, Carlo, I'm guessing you can also unmute and specify the question if you want. I'm guessing when you say RAG system, it's about retrieval augmented generation, so it would be about grounding, right? And here the challenge, maybe I can see what kind of, so let's say if we use Copilot, I would have SharePoint as grounding data, right? So I would build my knowledge base in SharePoint, and then I would have the grounding there in my rack. And I'm just guessing here, unless Carlo can specify. Maybe it's more about the ecosystem knowledge base. Yeah.
I was thinking more to something based on open source, like for example, Open Web UI as something RAG function, even if they are basic. So if I rephrase the question is, what are the open source RAG system that can best fit your models and can take the most advantage of your models?
Thank you, Carlo.
Yeah, maybe I can start very quickly. So on our side, the model is agnostic to the RAG system that interacts with. I know people we have worked with things like LangChain, Llama Index, and so on. I'm not an expert on RAG myself, but it doesn't make a big difference, for any specificity in our model which RAG system you use.
Do we have other inputs from Arthur and Paul or recommendations?
No. Sorry, I was sending the message in the chat.
No, it's okay. I think we can move on. Do any of the panelists, do you guys have a closing argument or something you want to give as a closing argument with our participants, or a call to action, maybe?
For me, I think that, for example, collaboration is really important, and we see it. I think is the product is open source projects, and I think we need to keep working and collaborating more in that term in Europe. I mean, I think we have a lot of talent. We have the resources. I mean, we will have more of them in some sense, but we have the main resources. So I think we need to connect everything and start to focus really on what we need and adopt fast. Is what we said before is we need to do things faster. I think that sometimes we have the right focus, but we go so slow that maybe when we start the project, maybe it's late. It's too late. So I think we need to collaborate because we have the main keys and the main resources to really be at the top and to compete with the United States and China with work, of course. But as I said before, I have hope because I've seen that China took 2 years to do that. It's true that it's different to us, but it's possible, so we can do that.
Yeah, and I think today's workshop could be a jumping off point to collaborate, right? I don't know if you three, for example, worked together before, but I'm happy to have a call. I know some people from the Apparatus engineering team, so maybe we could come together and share experiences. What do you think, Arthur? And you can answer question 7. And I think it's still also open for everybody, Theodor, right? Question 7?
Yes, it's open.
Fully agree with the statement that we have to cooperate, and this is the key, and actually in Tilde's DNA, to be open, to share, and to cooperate. But secondly, my message to the workshop participants would be, actually, I would like to encourage to try start with something simple, like it was stated, machine translation, summarization, like basic things. And even more, if the previous experience was kind of unsuccessful, try it one more time, because technology is developing so fast. What was kind of impossible half a year ago, even 3 months ago. Now it could be doable. So just give us a second chance, and yeah, the key is to try and to see is it really working.
Thank you, Arturs. And Andreas, final.
We are very happy to collaborate with the other open source developers. In fact, we already do collaborate with people in Apertus, OpenLLM, and other initiatives in Europe. And I think this is, if you look at what the Chinese labs did, they also share a lot of information between them, and they have a lot of collaborations between Alibaba and DeepSeek, for example. They were distilling each other's models and so on. And I think we need that kind of ecosystem in Europe as well. So let's do it.
Thank you. And before I hand it over, actually, the wish from my side goes also same direction as Artur's. Today, we are talking about open source AI, but we almost exclusively talked about LLMs. So it's not always the most efficient way to just throw LLMs at every problem. And I think maybe one of the niches that we could explore in Europe is actually use good old machine learning for cases where actually machine learning solves the case. And we can maybe not be the ones who use most money, most power and everything, but maybe we can be the most efficient if you differentiate correctly between where is actually an LLM and that much power and tokens needed, and where we can maybe sometimes even just use a small, simple Excel regression or just good old machine learning. Yeah. Awesome, and thank you for nodding again, Artur. I feel very validated. And maybe we can go to the conclusion, and for that, I hand it over to you, Alejandro, again.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. Thank you also to our panelists, Paul, Andrea, Arturs. It has been a really, really interesting workshop. We have 2 minutes. I will not take much of your time. I will just basically read you the actual notes I was taking during your presentations. Conclusions. So aligned with the actual objectives that we had at the beginning, Europe is a collaborative system at its core. This is what we're working on. So it's open source, but open source not only that, as has been highlighted by Andrea from EuroLLM, tools from TildeOpen at the very beginning of the presentations, very boldly. Open source is also an enabler of sovereignty, of transparency, and trust as well. Something that we cannot say sometimes about some proprietary products coming from across the pond. It can also, interesting to me, also is the actual statement that you had, that it can also boost the actual development and deployment pace, that it can make quicker actual development of European solutions just because of this collaborative approach, which is something also interesting I would like to highlight. So we have presented to you today 3 examples of projects, which we think are great, but there are many more as well. Many other projects at the European level that are developing models or platforms. The aim of the Open Source Observatory today, the OSOR in this case, is to just create awareness, and by that, so eventually help European public administrations to adopt open source AI models, showcasing how these models can be adapted to your particular use cases, and in the end, to develop a European ecosystem. As we said before, not only talking about models, but also talking about the infrastructure that comes with it that is needed. A few things that came with the questions that we asked you. The barrier you consider the most important is data quality and availability. We understand this data the models are trained on, but the barriers to overcome are not only technical. We also need policy efforts. We need people with the right skills. That was one of the actual top barriers that you highlighted from your questions, that you need people with the right skills and in-house. And the right funding mechanisms. We need investment. We're not talking only about software development, we're talking about infrastructure as well, and this needs a lot of time, a lot of money. And definitely a cultural shift towards open source, towards something European made. Also as highlighted by the answers to our questions, most of you are already using or looking into open source AI solutions. As we can see, mostly for translation tasks, which seems to be a very European need, many languages here. And the summarization, for instance, and those interesting features are very, very well supported by the European projects that we have presented today. Also, I saw that interesting examples of cases you are looking into, we've seen translation of legal text, and we've seen already some studies on the DGS going in this direction. We need to chat box also to help the translation of legal text. So hopefully, I don't know if it's too bold of a statement, but it seems that the supply and demand in the public sector is kind of the gears seem to align. We can go to the next. Yes, so just to close, it will take me just 1 minute. Please check out the OSOR collection under the Interoperability Europe portal. You will find there the new intelligence country fact sheets that we are uploading. We are nearly about to upload another case study on the ALIA, actually. And we are always presenting news, and we're always presenting materials that you can actually get and use as a basis to improve your knowledge on open source and to know what's going on. For this, please, you can refer to all the social networks. We're present in all of them, or most of them, or you can also reach out to us through our dedicated mailing list. Please don't forget to subscribe to the newsletter as well. Now it's going to be a special edition, as I said before, of the Interoperability Europe newsletter. And you can also leave comments whenever we publish something on the OSOR collection. You can also leave your comments in there, and we will answer to them. We are here for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining.